Okay, chapter 6.3. That's this chapter. Usually I write that out for you, but I've got all of this important information, so I just decided to go ahead and type it. Chapter 6.3, surface area of cylinders. Now let's start up here. We see that there's a piece of cardstock, maybe just a piece of paper, and it has a width and a length, and this is A, and it slowly gets curled. It gets curled, and it's curled a little more, and it's rolled into a cylinder. So it's a rectangle when it's flat on the table, but if you want to make it a three-dimensional object, an easy thing is to just roll it, and you get this cylinder. It has a top, it has a bottom, and it has this, it doesn't really have a side because it's round. What you end up with is this shape here, and this is a cylinder. Now there's a radius right here that's halfway across the top circle, and then there's the distance from the top to the bottom, which is called a height. And we're not looking for volume, okay, although that's kind of cool, but we're gonna just try to find surface area. So really what happens is, like, if you took a soda can and you were to kind of take it apart, you'd have a top, you'd have a bottom, and you'd unroll the outside edge to make a rectangle. Okay, and so to find surface area we have to add these surfaces together. Now there's a formula, and the formula is A, which is let's not use A because that's just area. We're going to use S for surface area, and it equals 2 times pi times radius squared plus 2 times pi times the radius times the height. And let's take this apart. This length here is the same as the circumference of the circle. See, this circumference, if you stretched it, if you just unrolled it and made it flat, would be this length of the rectangle. And the circumference of a circle, if you remember, is diameter times pi, or pi times d, or 2 pi r. Okay, so 2 pi r is right here. 2 pi r is this length of this side, and the height, so times the height, this 2 pi r times h is the rectangle. That's the area of the rectangle right here. Now that means that this is the area of the circle. What is the area of a circle? We just studied that. It's pi r squared. Pi r squared is here, pi r squared, but since there's two of them because there's a top lid and a bottom lid. So what we do is we just write a formula that takes care of all of these things at once. Now we don't really need this formula. If we see a cylinder, we could say, what's the area of the lid? We could find that. And once we find the area of the lid or the top, we could multiply that by 2 to get the area of the bottom. And then we have to find the perimeter of the circle, or the circumference of the circle, to get the length of the rectangle here, and then multiply it times the height. And as long as you understand that all of these pieces go together to make a cylinder, then you don't actually have to remember this formula. In fact, I almost would encourage you not to memorize this formula. You don't need to memorize it, but you have to understand it. And it's okay if you do memorize it. Okay, but so it's 2 pi r squared, which is 2 times the area of the top. Area of the top times 2 is 2 pi r squared, plus the area of the rectangle, the unrolled rectangle, which has to do with this picture here. So let's try one. Let's see, we have a tomato can. We'll do a real quick tomato can drawing. The hard part is trying to get these to line up. And so this is our tomato can, and I know that you can't quite see that outside edge, but we'll just assume that you kind of get it. And then we have a diameter here, a radius I mean. We'll say the radius is 2 inches. The radius is 2 inches, and the height is 5.5 inches. This is what a tomato can might be. So we want to just figure out the surface area of the whole can, or it could be that we would just want to find out the area of the paper label that goes around it, which looks like something we could do. But if we want the surface area, we're going to find 2 times pi r squared. That gets us the top, which is pi r squared times 2, the top and the bottom. And then we're going to do plus the circumference of the circle is 2 pi r, which gives us the distance around, gives us the length of the rectangle times the height for the rectangle in the middle. We always have to remember that there's going to be a rectangle and a top and a bottom if we unpeel everything. Alright, so 2 pi r, so 2 times 3.14 times radius squared, which is going to be 4 because 2 squared is 4, plus 2 times 3.14 times the height, which is times 5.5. And you just put that in your calculator. And I'm going to grab my little handheld calculator this time instead of doing it the other way, because there's more calculations and it's just quicker this way. 2 times 4 is 8, times 3.14 is 25.12, plus, and this is still the surface area, 2 times 5.5, which is 11, times 3.14, which is 34.54. And then I add that to 25.12, and you can do this on your own calculator, 59.66. And these are inches squared. That's the total surface area right there. Alright, pretty cool. That's all there is to it. This formula again is great if you remember it, but if you don't, it's okay. You just take it apart. Let's do it another one and just try it a different way. We won't use the formula. Okay, so the diameter is 5 inches and the height is 8 inches. Okay, so what's the area of the circle? This is one you do need to know, pi r squared. So the area of the circle is 3.14 times 5 to the second power, which is 3.14 times 25. And you just put that in your calculator, which is 78.5. It's supposed to be equal signs. And then you have to remember that there's 2 of those. Times 2. So 78.5 times 2 is 157. Now that's just for the top and the bottom. That seems like a lot. Well, apparently it is, because it's 10 inches across. If this were a rectangle, it would be 100, and 100 is just 2 inches, so, or 200 inches squared. Okay, so now then this one, the circumference equals 2 pi r, so that's 10 times, because the radius is 5, 2 times 5 is 10 times pi, and if pi is 3.14, we can do that in our head. 3.14 times pi is 31.4. And then that's the distance, and so the area of the rectangle equals 3.14 times the height, which is 8. Oh, not 3.14, 31.4. Well, let's get this right. 31.4 times 8, because that's the height. This is the height, this is the length. And then 31.4 times 8 is 251.2 inches squared. And I'm going to take that area and this area and add them, because this is the two height, the top and the bottom plus the sides. So we're going to add 157 onto 251, which equals, see, 157 plus 251 0.2 is equal to 408.2, and that's the area in inches squared, the surface area. So that would be a giant S, because we're doing surface area. Alright, don't want to keep you any longer. So this showed you two ways, using the formula and just using your head. You still need some formulas. You need the area of a circle and the circumference of a circle and the ability to think through this. But I think it's easier sometimes than remembering a big formula.